Your Honor, I have one wish before I go to prison. The black woman in the orange jumpsuit was shaking. Judge Carolyn Mercer had heard 1,000 final pleas. But when this one whispered what she wanted, when she said the name Naomi, Carolyn's blood went cold. Because Naomi was the birth name of her adopted daughter. The daughter is sleeping at home. The daughter this convicted criminal had just spent 3 months in jail searching for. And the entire courtroom was waiting for her answer. Hello, my amazing family and friends. I'm so glad you're here with me again today. If you're ready to dive into another powerful story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me the country or city you're watching from. And guess what? Tomorrow, I've got another story lined up that will leave you just as captivated, so don't miss it. Now, let's get started. The courtroom smelled like old wood and desperation. It always did on sentencing days. Judge Carolyn Mercer sat behind the bench, her black robe pressed and perfect, her silver-streaked blonde hair pulled back in the same tight bun she had worn for 16 years. At 38, she was one of the youngest Superior Court judges in Massachusetts, and she carried that responsibility like armor. She learned early that emotion was a luxury she could not afford. Not in a courtroom. Not when lives hung in the balance of her gavel. The case file sat open before her. Commonwealth versus Zion Hayes. Theft, breaking and entering, parole violation. The facts were straightforward, the law clear. Zion Hayes, 32 years old, had broken into a home in Beacon Hill 3 months ago. She had been caught on camera. She had confessed. There was no ambiguity here, no room for doubt. Carolyn glanced up. The defendant sat at the table to her left, her public defender beside her. Zion Hayes was small, almost fragile-looking in her oversized orange jumpsuit. Her hair was pulled back in a single braid that fell over her shoulder. Her hands were folded on the table, fingers laced together so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. She had not looked up once since entering the courtroom. Carolyn had seen this before. The shame, the exhaustion, the quiet resignation of someone who knew the system had already decided her fate before she walked through the door. But something about this woman felt different. Maybe it was the way she held herself, shoulders square despite everything. Maybe it was the way her jaw tightened when the prosecutor spoke, not in anger, but in something deeper. Grief, maybe, or regret. Carolyn cleared her throat. Ms. Hayes, please rise. The public defender, a tired-looking man named Gerald Fish, stood first. Zion followed a beat later, her movements careful, deliberate. She kept her eyes down. Ms. Hayes, Carolyn began, her voice steady and measured. You have been found guilty of breaking and entering, theft, and violation of parole. Before I impose sentencing, the court will hear any statement you wish to make. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Zion's voice was softer than Carolyn expected. There was no defiance in it. No bitterness. Just a kind of hollow weariness. Do you wish to make a statement? Zion hesitated. Her fingers tightened against each other. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she lifted her head. Their eyes met. Carolyn felt something shift in her chest. Zion's eyes were dark brown, almost black, and they were filled with something Carolyn had not expected to see. Not anger, not self-pity, hope. It was faint, fragile, barely there. But it was real. Yes, Your Honor, Zion said quietly. I'd like to say something. Carolyn nodded. Go ahead. Zion took a breath. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. I know what I did was wrong. I'm not here to make excuses or ask for sympathy. I broke the law. I broke into someone's home. I stole from them. And I violated the trust of the court when I was given parole. She paused. Carolyn waited. I was desperate, Zion continued. That doesn't make it right. But I need you to understand, I wasn't stealing jewelry or electronics. I was looking for something I lost a long time ago. Something that belonged to me. Something I thought I'd never see again. The courtroom was silent. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. I don't expect you to believe me, Zion said. I don't even know if it matters anymore. But I need to say it out loud. I need someone to hear me. Carolyn's pen hovered over her notepad. She had heard 1,000 justifications, 1,000 reasons, 1,000 sad stories. Most of them were true. None of them changed the law. But something about the way Zion spoke, the way her voice cracked just slightly on the word lost, made Carolyn hesitate. What were you looking for, Miss Hayes? Carolyn asked. It was not a question she was supposed to ask. It was not part of the process. But the words came out anyway. Zion looked down at her hands. A photograph, she said quietly. Of my daughter. The air in the courtroom seemed to thicken. Carolyn felt her chest tighten. Your daughter, Carolyn repeated. Zion nodded. She was taken from me when she was 3 years old. I lost custody. I made mistakes. Bad ones. And by the time I got clean, by the time I got my life together, she was already placed with another family. They adopted her. Closed adoption. I don't even know her name anymore. Her voice broke. She stopped, swallowed hard, then continued. The house I broke into used to belong to my caseworker. She retired years ago, but I remembered the address. I thought maybe, just maybe, she still had the file. The picture. Something. Anything. Carolyn set her pen down. She did not trust her hands to stay steady. Did you find it? She asked. Zion shook her head. No, Your Honor. The family that lives there now, they don't know anything about it. They called the police. I don't blame them. I was a stranger in their house in the middle of the night. I would have called the police too. She looked up again, and this time there were tears in her eyes. But she did not let them fall. I know I have to go to prison, Zion said. I know that. I'm not asking you to let me go. I'm not asking for mercy I don't deserve. But I have one wish, Your Honor. One thing I need before I go. Carolyn's throat felt tight. What is it? Zion's voice dropped to barely more than a whisper. I want to see her. Just once. Even if she doesn't know who I am. Even if I can't speak to her. I just want to see that she's okay. That she's loved. That she's safe. The silence that followed was deafening. Carolyn stared at the woman before her. She thought of the law. She thought of precedent. She thought of the victim's family, the broken window, the violated home. And then she thought of something else. She thought of the photograph on her own desk. The one she kept face down. The one she had not looked at in 3 years. Ms. Hayes, Carolyn said slowly. Do you know where your daughter is now? Zion shook her head. No, Your Honor. The adoption was sealed. I've tried to find out, but the courts won't tell me. Privacy laws. I understand. But Her voice cracked. I just want to know she's happy. Carolyn looked down at the case file. Then she looked back at Zion. And for the first time in 16 years, Judge Carolyn Mercer did something she had never done before. She stood up. The entire courtroom seemed to freeze. The bailiff straightened. The prosecutor looked confused. Gerald Fish's mouth fell open slightly. Carolyn stepped down from the bench. Her heels clicked softly against the floor as she walked toward the defense table. Every eye in the room followed her. She stopped in front of Zion Hayes. Up close, she could see the lines around Zion's eyes. The exhaustion etched into her face. The way her lips trembled as she tried to hold herself together. Carolyn's own hands were shaking now. How old would she be? Carolyn asked quietly. Zion blinked, surprised by the question. She'd be 11 now? Almost 12. Carolyn's breath caught. What was her name? Carolyn asked. Before the adoption. Zion's tears finally spilled over. Naomi, she whispered. Her name was Naomi. The room tilted. Carolyn reached into the pocket of her robe. Her fingers closed around the small, worn photograph she had carried with her every day for the past 9 years. The one she could not throw away. The one she could not look at. She pulled it out. Her hand trembled as she held it up. It was a picture of a little girl, no more than 3 years old, with wide brown eyes and 2 puffs of hair tied with yellow ribbons. She was smiling at the camera, her tiny hand reaching toward whoever was holding it. On the back, written in faded ink, were 2 words, Naomi Hayes. Zion's knees buckled. Gerald caught her by the arm, but she was staring at the photograph, her whole body shaking. That's her, Zion breathed. That's my baby. Carolyn's voice was barely audible. I know. The courtroom erupted. The prosecutor shot to his feet. The bailiff moved forward. Gerald was saying something, but Carolyn could not hear him. All she could hear was the sound of Zion's sobbing. All she could see was the face of the little girl she had adopted 9 years ago. The little girl who had no memory of the woman standing in front of her. The little girl who called Carolyn Mom. The little girl whose birth name had been Naomi Hayes. What would you do if you discovered the person you were about to sentence was connected to your life in a way you never imagined? Drop a comment below and let me know. The gavel lay silent on the bench. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound in the courtroom was Zion's ragged breathing and the distant hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Carolyn's hand was still extended, the photograph trembling between her fingers. She could not pull it back. She could not move. It was as if every muscle in her body had forgotten how to function. Zion reached out slowly, her fingers hovering just above the image. She did not touch it. She just stared, her lips moving soundlessly as if she were memorizing every detail. The yellow ribbons, the dimpled smile, the way Naomi's tiny hand stretched toward the camera. "May I?" Zion whispered. Carolyn nodded. She could not speak. Zion took the photograph with both hands, cradling it like something sacred. Her tears fell onto the plastic surface, and she quickly wiped them away with her sleeve, terrified of damaging it. She was so small, Zion breathed. I forgot how small she was. Gerald Fish cleared his throat. His voice was hoarse. Your Honor, I think we need a recess. This is highly irregular, and I believe there may be grounds for recusal based on Mr. Fish. Carolyn's voice cut through the air like glass. She turned to face him, and something in her expression made him stop mid-sentence. Sit down. He sat. Carolyn turned to the bailiff. Clear the courtroom. The bailiff, a stocky man named Raymond who had worked with Carolyn for 6 years, hesitated. Your Honor. Clear it, Carolyn repeated. Her voice was steady now, though her hands were still shaking. Everyone except Ms. Hayes, Mr. Fish, and the court reporter. Now, Raymond exchanged a glance with the prosecutor, a sharp-faced woman named Linda Ortiz, who looked like she wanted to object. But something in Carolyn's tone left no room for argument. You heard the judge, Raymond said. Everybody out. There was a shuffle of movement. Spectators rose from the gallery. The prosecutor gathered her files with stiff, angry movements. A journalist near the back tried to linger, but Raymond gestured firmly toward the door. Within 2 minutes, the courtroom was empty except for the 4 of them. The heavy doors closed with a soft thud that echoed in the silence. Carolyn turned back to Zion, who was still holding the photograph. The inmate's face was streaked with tears, but she had stopped sobbing. Now she just looked stunned, as if her mind could not process what was happening. Carolyn took a slow breath. Then she removed her robe. The gesture felt monumental, though it was just fabric slipping off her shoulders. Underneath, she wore a simple gray blouse and black slacks. She folded the robe carefully and set it on the bench. When she turned back, she was no longer Judge Mercer. She was just Carolyn. Sit down, she said quietly, gesturing to the defense table. Zion sank into the chair, still clutching the photograph. Gerald remained standing, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Your Honor, I have to advise you that this is a serious conflict of interest, he said. If it comes out that you have a personal connection to the defendant. I know what it is, Gerald, Carolyn said. She pulled a chair from the prosecution table and sat down across from Zion. For a moment, she just looked at the woman in front of her. Really looked. Zion's face was gaunt, her cheekbones sharp beneath her skin. There were shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and years of struggle. But beneath all of that, Carolyn could see something else. Strength, resilience, a refusal to break even when everything else had. How long have you been clean? Carolyn asked. Zion blinked, surprised. For years. 3 months. 16 days. What was your drug of choice? Heroin. And whatever else I could get. Zion's voice was flat, factual. There was no shame in it. Just honesty. When did you lose custody of Naomi? 7 years ago. She was 3.5. I was living in a shelter. I missed 2 supervised visits because I was high. Child Services took her. They gave me a case plan. I was supposed to complete rehab, get stable housing, pass drug tests. I tried. I really did. But I kept relapsing. And then one day, they told me the plan was closed. She was going to be adopted. They said it was in her best interest. Zion's fingers traced the edge of the photograph. They were right. I couldn't take care of her. I couldn't even take care of myself. Carolyn's chest ached. She thought of the day she and her late husband, Thomas, had brought Naomi home. The little girl had been so quiet, so withdrawn. She barely spoke for the first 3 months. She flinched at loud noises. She hoarded food under her bed. It took a year before she smiled without fear behind it. Do you know what happened to her after the adoption? Zion asked softly. Carolyn's throat tightened. Yes. Is she okay? Yes. Does she have a good family? People who love her? Carolyn's eyes burned. Yes. Zion exhaled, and it sounded like relief. Good. That's all I needed to know. She tried to hand the photograph back, but Carolyn did not take it. Keep it, Carolyn said. Zion shook her head quickly. I can't. It's yours. I shouldn't have even. It was always yours, Carolyn interrupted. I've been holding on to it for you. I just didn't know it until now. Zion stared at her, confusion and something else, something fragile and dangerous, flickering in her eyes. I don't understand. How do you have this? How do you know about Naomi? Carolyn's hands clenched in her lap. This was the moment. The edge of the cliff. She could step back, recuse herself, let another judge handle the sentencing, bury this coincidence so deep it would never see daylight. But when she looked at Zion, when she saw the hope and the fear and the desperate need in her eyes, Carolyn knew she could not walk away. Because, Carolyn said quietly, I adopted her. The words hung in the air like smoke. Zion went perfectly still. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. You, she finally whispered. You're her mother. I'm one of them, Carolyn said. Her adoptive mother. But you're the one who gave her life. You're the one she came from. Zion's face crumpled. She pressed a hand over her mouth, trying to hold back the sob that tore out of her anyway. It was a sound of pure, unfiltered anguish. She's yours, Zion choked out. She's really yours. Oh God, I broke into the wrong house. I was looking in the wrong place this whole time, and she was. Her words dissolved into tears. She bent forward, her shoulders shaking, the photograph pressed against her chest. Carolyn reached out instinctively, then stopped herself. She did not know if touch would be welcome, if it would be a comfort or an intrusion. But Zion looked up, her face raw and open, and whispered, Is she happy? Yes, Carolyn said, and her own voice broke. She's so happy. She's smart and kind and funny. She loves to read. She plays soccer. She has friends. She's thriving. Does she remember me? Carolyn hesitated. The truth felt like a betrayal, but lying felt worse. No, she said softly. She doesn't. She was so young when she was removed. And the trauma, it affected her memory. She knows she's adopted. We've always been honest with her about that. But she doesn't have specific memories of you. Zion nodded slowly, as if she had expected that answer. That's probably better. She doesn't need to remember the bad parts. The times I wasn't there. The times I chose the drugs over her. That's not all you were, Carolyn said firmly. You were also the woman who gave birth to her, who held her, who loved her even when you were falling apart. I did love her, Zion whispered. I still do. Every single day. Even when I didn't know where she was or what her name was anymore, I loved her. Carolyn felt tears on her own cheeks now. She did not bother to wipe them away. She has your eyes, Carolyn said. And your smile. When she laughs, really laughs, she sounds just like you did when you spoke about her just now. Full of light. Zion covered her face with her hands. Her whole body trembled. Gerald finally spoke, his voice gentle. Your Honor, Carolyn, what do you want to do here? Because legally, this is a minefield. Carolyn looked at him. Then she looked back at Zion. I don't know, she admitted. But I know I can't sentence her. Not like this. Then you'll recuse yourself? Yes. But first, I need to do something. She stood up and walked back to the bench. She picked up her phone, the one she kept silenced during court hours, and stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she dialed. It rang 3 times before a young voice answered. Hello. Hi, sweetheart, Carolyn said, her voice carefully steady. It's Mom. Is Grandma Joan still there with you? Yeah, she's making dinner. Are you coming home soon? Soon. I just wanted to hear your voice. How was school? It was good. We had a substitute in math, and she let us work in groups. Oh, and guess what? I got an A on my history project. Carolyn smiled through her tears. That's wonderful, baby. I'm so proud of you. Thanks, Mom. I gotta go. Grandma's calling me. Love you. I love you too. So much. The line went dead. Carolyn lowered the phone. When she turned back, Zion was staring at her with an expression that was equal parts agony and wonder. Was that her? Zion asked. Carolyn nodded. What's her name now? Carolyn hesitated. Then she said, Ava. We named her Ava Naomi Mercer. We kept her middle name. We wanted her to have something that was still hers. Zion pressed the photograph to her lips, tears streaming down her face. Ava, she whispered. Ava Naomi. That's beautiful. Carolyn sat back down. Her mind was racing, but her heart was strangely calm. She knew what she had to do. It terrified her. It could ruin her career. It could open her family up to scrutiny and judgment. But it was the only thing that felt right. Zion, she said quietly. I'm going to recuse myself from your case. Another judge will handle your sentencing. But before I do, I need to ask you something." Zion looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Do you want to see her?" Carolyn asked. Not as her birth mother, not in any official capacity, but just to see her, to know she's real. Zion's breath caught. "You would let me do that?" "I don't know if I can. I don't know if it's legal or ethical or even possible. But I want to try. If you want it." "I do," Zion said immediately. "More than anything. But I don't want to hurt her. I don't want to confuse her or scare her. If it's better for her that I stay away, then I'll stay away." Carolyn studied her. The woman sitting across from her was not the monster the prosecutor had painted. She was not a career criminal or a danger to society. She was just a mother who had lost everything and spent years trying to claw her way back. "Let me talk to my lawyer," Carolyn said, "and a family therapist. And maybe we can figure something out. I can't make any promises, but I'll try." Zion nodded, fresh tears spilling over. Thank you so much. You don't know what this means to me." "I think I do," Carolyn said softly. She stood and walked to the bench one last time. She picked up the gavel and set it down gently. "This hearing is continued pending reassignment," she said, her voice formal again. "Ms. Hayes will remain in custody. Mr. Fish, you'll be notified when a new judge is assigned to the case." Gerald nodded, still looking shell-shocked. Carolyn turned to Zion one last time. "I'll be in touch. I promise." Zion stood, still holding the photograph. "Your Honor, Carolyn, I know I don't have the right to ask anything from you. But please tell Ava that somewhere out there, her first mama loves her. That she always has. Even if she never knows my name." Carolyn's vision blurred. "I will. I promise." Raymond opened the courtroom doors. The world outside rushed back in, loud and chaotic and overwhelming. But for just a moment, Carolyn and Zion stood in the quiet eye of the storm, two mothers bound by one extraordinary little girl. And everything had changed. Carolyn did not go home that night. She sat in her chambers long after the building had emptied, the city lights of Boston glowing through her window. Her robe hung on the back of the door like a ghost. The case files on her desk had been pushed aside, forgotten. All she could think about was the look on Zion's face when she held that photograph. And the sound of Ava's voice on the phone, so bright and unburdened, unaware that the woman who gave birth to her was sitting in a jail cell less than 5 miles away. Carolyn's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. It was her sister-in-law, Joan, who had been staying with them since Thomas died. "Joan, Ava's asking why you sounded upset on the phone. I told her you probably just had a long day. Everything okay? ***. Carolyn stared at the message. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. How could she even begin to explain? "Carolyn, everything's fine. I'll be home soon. Thank you for staying with her, ***. She set the phone down and pressed her palms against her eyes. Her head was pounding. The weight of what had happened in that courtroom pressed down on her chest like a stone. A knock at the door startled her. "Come in," she called, her voice rough. The door opened, and Gerald Fish stepped inside. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his jacket slung over his arm. He closed the door behind him and stood there awkwardly for a moment. "I wasn't sure if you'd still be here," he said. "I wasn't sure either," Carolyn admitted. Gerald crossed the room and sat down in one of the chairs across from her desk. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I've been a public defender for 19 years, Gerald finally said. "I've seen a lot of things, a lot of injustice, a lot of coincidences, but I've never seen anything like what happened today." "Neither have I," Carolyn said quietly. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." Gerald leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Carolyn, I need to be honest with you. If this gets out, if anyone finds out that you presided over a case involving your daughter's birth mother, it could destroy your career. There will be questions about bias, about whether you've shown favoritism in other cases. The media will have a field day. I know. And even if you recuse yourself now, even if another judge takes over, people will ask why. They'll dig. And when they find out the truth, it won't matter that you stepped aside. The damage will be done." Carolyn met his eyes. "Are you advising me to bury this?" "I'm advising you to think very carefully about what comes next. Because once you open this door, you can't close it." Carolyn looked down at her hands. They were still trembling slightly. "What if I don't want to close it?" Gerald's expression softened. "Then you need to be prepared for the consequences. And so does Zion. And so does your daughter. The mention of Ava made Carolyn's chest tighten. She doesn't know anything about this yet. About Zion. About today. Are you going to tell her? I don't know. She's 11 years old. How do I explain that her birth mother, the woman she doesn't even remember, broke into someone's home looking for a picture of her? How do I explain that I was the judge assigned to her case? It sounds like something out of a movie. It does, Gerald agreed. But it's also the truth. And kids, they have a way of sensing when something's being hidden from them. Especially something this big. Carolyn knew he was right. Ava was perceptive. She noticed everything. If Carolyn started acting strange, started pulling away or being evasive, Ava would know something was wrong. What did Zion say after I left? Carolyn asked. Gerald sighed. She cried for about 10 minutes straight. Then she asked me if there was any way she could reduce her sentence. Not for herself. For Ava. She said she didn't want her daughter to grow up knowing her birth mother was in prison. Carolyn felt a lump in her throat. What did you tell her? I told her the truth. That she's looking at a minimum of 3 years, possibly 5. Breaking and entering, theft, parole violation, those are serious charges. And given her record, the prosecutor's going to push for the maximum. But she wasn't stealing for herself, Carolyn said. She was looking for her daughter. I know, and I'll make that argument. But legally, motive doesn't change the crime. The family whose home she broke into, they were terrified. They have kids. They have a right to feel safe in their own house. Carolyn closed her eyes. I know they do. She thought of the victims, a couple in their 40s who had testified at the preliminary hearing. The wife had cried on the stand, describing how she woke up to the sound of breaking glass. How she thought someone was there to hurt her children. How she still couldn't sleep through the night. Zion's pain did not erase theirs. What if there was another way? Carolyn asked quietly. Gerald frowned. What do you mean? What if instead of prison, she could serve her time differently? Community service. Intensive probation. Restitution to the victims. Something that holds her accountable but doesn't destroy the progress she's made. Carolyn, you can't advocate for leniency. You're recusing yourself, remember? And even if you weren't, it would look like favoritism. I'm not talking about favoritism. I'm talking about what's just. Zion has been clean for over 4 years. She's been working. She's been trying to turn her life around. Yes, she made a terrible mistake. But does that mistake really warrant throwing away everything she's built? Gerald studied her. You care about her. I care about what's right. Those aren't always the same thing. Carolyn stood up and walked to the window. Below, the city was alive with light and movement. People going home to their families. People who had no idea that somewhere in that vast sprawl, 2 women's lives had collided in the most impossible way. When Thomas died, Carolyn said quietly, Ava was 8 years old. She didn't understand why he wasn't coming home. She kept asking when Daddy would be back from the hospital. And I had to tell her, over and over, that he wasn't coming back. That he was gone. She paused, her breath fogging the glass. It took her months to stop asking. And even now, 3 years later, I see the way she looks at other kids with their fathers. The way she goes quiet on Father's Day. She's lost so much already. And I can't help but think, what if she's been mourning someone else too? Someone she doesn't even remember? You think she needs to know about Zion, Gerald said. I think she deserves the truth. Whatever that truth is. And I think Zion deserves a chance to be more than just a mistake in Ava's story. Gerald was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked over to her. If you're serious about this, if you really want to help Zion, you need to do it the right way. No special treatment. No bending the rules. You hire her a better lawyer. Someone who can argue for alternative sentencing. You work with a family therapist to figure out if and how Zion should be introduced to Ava. And you stay out of the legal proceedings entirely. I know. And you need to talk to Ava before this goes any further. Because if she finds out some other way, if she feels like you kept this from her, it could do more harm than good. Carolyn nodded. The thought of that conversation terrified her. But Gerald was right. Ava deserved to hear it from her. Thank you, Carolyn said. For staying. For listening. Gerald gave her a small, sad smile. That's what public defenders do. We listen to the stories no one else wants to hear. He left, and Carolyn was alone again. She picked up her phone and scrolled to a name she had not called in years. Dr. Lisa Whitmore, a family therapist who specialized in adoption and trauma. They had worked together when Ava first came to live with them, helping the little girl adjust to her new life. Carolyn took a breath and dialed. The phone rang twice before a warm, familiar voice answered. Carolyn, is that you? Hi, Lisa. I know it's late, but I need your help. Of course. What's going on? Carolyn closed her eyes. Something impossible just happened, and I don't know how to tell my daughter about it. It was past midnight when Carolyn finally pulled into her driveway. The house was dark except for the porch light Joan always left on. Carolyn sat in the car for a moment, her hands still gripping the steering wheel, trying to gather the strength to go inside. She thought about the conversation she'd just had with Dr. Whitmore. The therapist had been calm, measured, asking all the right questions. How much does Ava know about her birth mother? Has she ever expressed curiosity about her origins? How do you think she'll react to learning that her birth mother is currently incarcerated? Carolyn had answered as honestly as she could, but the truth was, she did not know how Ava would react. Her daughter was strong and resilient, but she was also sensitive. She felt things deeply, and this was so much bigger than anything they had navigated before. Dr. Whitmore had advised her to move slowly, to give Ava the information in pieces, not all at once, to let her process, to be prepared for anger, confusion, even rejection. But she had also said something that stuck with Carolyn. The fact that you're even considering this, the fact that you're willing to let Zion into Ava's life in some capacity, that takes incredible courage. Not many adoptive parents would do that. Carolyn was not sure it was courage. It felt more like necessity, like something she could not avoid even if she wanted to. She finally got out of the car and walked up to the front door. The house smelled like Joan's cooking, something with garlic and rosemary. Carolyn found her sister-in-law in the living room, reading a book with her feet tucked under her. Joan looked up and set the book aside. You look like you've been through a war. Something like that, Carolyn said. She collapsed onto the couch beside her. Joan studied her with the kind of knowing look that only family could give. Want to talk about it? Carolyn shook her head. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know. Joan did not push. She just reached over and squeezed Carolyn's hand. Ava's asleep. She tried to wait up for you, but she was exhausted. She left you a note on the kitchen counter. Carolyn's heart squeezed. She stood and walked into the kitchen. The note was written on a torn piece of notebook paper in Ava's careful handwriting. Mom, I hope your day got better. I made you a picture at school. It's on the fridge. Love you to the moon and back. Ava ***. Carolyn looked at the refrigerator. Sure enough, there was a new drawing held up by a magnet. It showed two stick figures, one tall and one small, holding hands under a smiling sun. The taller figure had yellow hair. The smaller one had brown. Underneath, Ava had written, Me and Mom, best team ever. Carolyn pressed her hand over her mouth. The tears came before she could stop them. Joan appeared in the doorway. Honey, what's wrong? Carolyn could not answer. She just stood there, staring at the drawing, thinking about the woman in the orange jumpsuit who would give anything to hold the hand of the little girl who drew it. I met someone today, Carolyn finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Someone who's going to change everything. Joan frowned. What do you mean? Carolyn turned to face her. Ava's birth mother. I met her, and I don't know what to do. Joan's eyes went wide. How? Where? In my courtroom. She was the defendant. Joan sank into a chair, her hand over her heart. Oh my God. Carolyn. Oh my God. I know. What was she there for? Breaking and entering. She was looking for a picture of Ava. She didn't know I had adopted her. She didn't know anything. And now I have to figure out how to tell Ava that the woman who gave birth to her is in jail. That she's been looking for her. That she never stopped loving her. Joan was silent for a long moment. Then she stood and pulled Carolyn into a tight hug. You'll figure it out. You always do. And whatever you decide, I'll support you. So will Ava. She's stronger than you think. Carolyn held on to her, letting herself be held. I'm so scared, Joan. What if I'm making a mistake? What if this hurts her? And what if it heals her? Joan said softly. What if knowing that her birth mother loved her, that she never forgot her, is exactly what Ava needs to hear? Carolyn pulled back, wiping her eyes. When did you get so wise? Joan smiled. I've always been wise. You just never listened. Carolyn laughed despite everything. It felt good to laugh. It felt human. She looked back at the drawing on the fridge, the two stick figures holding hands. And she made a decision. Tomorrow, she would talk to Ava. She would tell her the truth, as gently as she could. And then, together, they would figure out what came next. Because Ava deserved to know where she came from. and Zion deserved to know that her daughter was loved. The next morning came too quickly. Carolyn woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window and the sound of Ava's laughter drifting up from the kitchen. For a moment, she let herself pretend that yesterday had not happened, that she was just a mother waking up to another ordinary Saturday, that the world had not shifted beneath her feet. But when she sat up and saw the clothes she had worn to court draped over the chair, still wrinkled and carrying the weight of everything that had transpired, reality crashed back in. She showered and dressed slowly, rehearsing different versions of the conversation in her mind. None of them felt right. How did you tell a child that the ghost she never knew existed had suddenly become real? When she came downstairs, Ava was at the kitchen table eating cereal and reading a book. Her hair was pulled back in 2 puffs, secured with bright green hair ties. She looked up when Carolyn entered, her face breaking into a smile. "Morning, Mom. Aunt Joan made pancakes, but I already ate them all." "Sorry." Carolyn smiled and kissed the top of her head. "It's okay, baby. I'm not that hungry anyway." Joan was at the sink washing dishes. She caught Carolyn's eye and gave her a small, encouraging nod. "Ava, sweetheart," Carolyn said, pulling out a chair and sitting down across from her daughter. "Can we talk for a minute?" Ava's smile faded slightly. She set down her spoon. "Am I in trouble?" No, not at all. I just need to talk to you about something important." Ava closed her book and gave Carolyn her full attention. Her dark eyes, so much like Zion's, were serious now. Worried, Carolyn took a breath. "Do you remember when we talked about how you came to live with me and Daddy? About how you were adopted?" Ava nodded slowly. "Yeah. You said my first mom couldn't take care of me, that she loved me, but she was sick, and that you and Daddy wanted me so much that you chose me." Carolyn's throat tightened. "That's right. And all of that is still true. But yesterday, something happened. Something I need to tell you about." "What happened?" "I met your birth mother." The words hung in the air. Ava's eyes went wide. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. "Her name is Zion," Carolyn continued gently, "and she's been looking for you for a very long time." Ava's voice was barely a whisper. "She has." "Yes. She never stopped thinking about you. She never stopped loving you." Ava's hands gripped the edge of the table. "Where is she? Can I meet her?" Carolyn hesitated. This was the hard part. "It's complicated, sweetheart. She's in some trouble right now. Legal trouble. She made a mistake, and she's paying for it. But before all of that happened, she was trying to find you. She wanted to make sure you were okay." "What kind of mistake?" Carolyn chose her words carefully. "She went into someone's house without permission. She was looking for something that belonged to you. A picture from when you were little. She didn't mean to scare anyone, but she broke the law, and now she has to face the consequences." Ava was quiet for a long moment. Her face was unreadable. Then she asked, "Did she find it?" "The picture?" "No. But I have it. I've had it all along. I just didn't know she was looking for it." "Can I see it?" Carolyn pulled the photograph from her pocket. She had been carrying it since yesterday, unable to let it go. She slid it across the table. Ava picked it up with both hands, just like Zion had. She stared at it, her expression shifting from confusion to wonder. "That's me," she said softly. "Yes. I was really little. You were 3. Ava traced the image with her finger. "I don't remember this. I don't remember her." "I know. And that's okay. You were very young. Was she nice to me?" Carolyn's chest ached. "She loved you very much. But she was struggling. She was sick in a way that made it hard for her to take care of you the way you deserved. And that's why you came to live with me and Daddy. Because we could give you the life she wanted you to have." Ava looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Does she know about me now? Does she know I'm okay?" "Yes. I told her. I told her you're happy and safe and loved. And that's all she wanted to hear." A tear slipped down Ava's cheek. She wiped it away quickly. "Why are you telling me this now?" Carolyn reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "Because I think you have a right to know where you came from. And because Zion, your birth mother, she asked if she could see you. Just once. Just to know that you're real." Ava's breath hitched. "She wants to see me?" "Yes. But only if you want to see her. This is your choice, Ava. No one is going to force you to do anything you're not ready for." Ava looked down at the photograph again. Her small fingers trembled. "What if I don't know what to say to her?" "Then you don't have to say anything. You can just be there. You can just let her see that you're okay." "Will she be mad at me? For not remembering her?" "Oh, sweetheart, no." Carolyn squeezed her hand. "She could never be mad at you. All she feels is love. And maybe sadness, because she missed so much of your life. But never anger. Not toward you. Ava was quiet for a long time. Carolyn could see her processing, working through the tangle of emotions. Finally, she looked up. Can I think about it? Ava asked. Before I decide? Of course. Take all the time you need. Ava nodded. Then she stood and walked around the table. She climbed into Carolyn's lap, even though she was getting too big for it, and buried her face in her mother's shoulder. Carolyn held her tight, rocking her gently the way she used to when Ava was small and afraid of the dark. I love you, Mom, Ava whispered. I love you too, baby. So much. Will you still be my mom? Even if I meet her? Carolyn's heart broke and mended in the same breath. Always. Forever. Nothing will ever change that. Ava nodded against her shoulder. They stayed like that for a long time, Joan watching quietly from the doorway, the morning sun pouring through the window and painting everything in soft gold. 3 days passed before Ava made her decision. In that time, Carolyn watched her daughter closely. Ava was quieter than usual. She spent more time in her room, staring at the photograph. She asked questions, small ones at first, then bigger. What did Zion look like? What was her favorite color? Did she like to read? Carolyn answered as best she could, but the truth was, she did not know much about Zion beyond what she had seen in the courtroom and read in the case files. So she reached out to Gerald, who reached out to Zion, and slowly, carefully, they began to build a bridge. Zion sent a letter. It was written on lined paper in careful, slanted handwriting. Gerald delivered it to Carolyn's home on a Tuesday evening. Carolyn read it first, alone in her bedroom, to make sure it was appropriate. And what she found made her cry. Dear Ava, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if you even want to. But I need to write it anyway, just in case. My name is Zion Hayes, and I'm your birth mother. I gave birth to you on a cold November morning 11 years ago. You came into the world screaming, and I thought you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I held you for 3 days before they took you to foster care. In those 3 days, I memorized everything about you. The way your tiny fingers curled around mine. The way you smelled like milk and hope. The way you looked at me like I was your whole world. And then I lost you. Not because I didn't love you, but because I loved you so much that I couldn't bear to watch you suffer because of my mistakes. I was broken, Ava. Broken in ways I didn't know how to fix. And I made choices that hurt you. Choices that meant you had to grow up without me. But I need you to know something. Every single day since they took you, I have thought about you. I have wondered if you were happy, if you were safe, if you knew how much I loved you. I don't expect you to understand. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I hope, someday, you'll know that giving you up was the hardest and bravest thing I've ever done. Because you deserved more than I could give you. Your mom, Carolyn, she's a good person. She's given you the life I always dreamed you'd have. And I'm so grateful to her. I'm grateful that you have someone who loves you the way I always wanted to. Asterisk asterisk. If you ever want to meet me, I'll be here. And if you don't, I understand. Either way, I'll keep loving you from wherever I am. Asterisk asterisk. You are my heart, Ava. You always will be. Love, Zion. Carolyn folded the letter carefully and brought it to Ava's room. Her daughter was sitting on her bed, knees pulled to her chest, staring out the window. She wrote you a letter, Carolyn said softly. Ava turned, her eyes widening. She did. Carolyn handed it to her. You don't have to read it right now. You can wait until you're ready. But Ava took it immediately. Her hands shook as she unfolded the paper. Carolyn sat on the edge of the bed and waited. Ava read slowly, her lips moving slightly with the words. Halfway through, tears started streaming down her face. By the time she finished, she was sobbing. Carolyn pulled her close, holding her as she cried. It's okay, baby. Let it out. She loved me. Ava choked out. She really loved me. She did. She does. I want to meet her, Mom. I want to see her. Carolyn pulled back and looked into her daughter's eyes. Are you sure? Ava nodded, wiping her face. I'm sure. I need to tell her something. What do you need to tell her? Ava took a shaky breath. That I'm okay. That I'm happy. That I don't hate her. Carolyn's eyes filled with tears. She cupped Ava's face in her hands. Then we'll make it happen. I promise. Arranging the meeting was not easy. Carolyn had to call in favors. She had to navigate a maze of legal and ethical boundaries. She consulted with Dr. Whitmore, who insisted on being present for the meeting. She worked with Gerald and the jail administration to find a neutral, private space. And through it all, she wrestled with her own fears. What if this was too much for Ava? What if seeing Zion in a jail setting traumatized her? What if Zion said something that hurt her? But every time doubt crept in, Carolyn thought of Zion's letter, of the raw, honest love in every word. And she thought of Ava's face when she said, "I need to tell her I don't hate her." Some things were more important than fear. Finally, 2 weeks after that first impossible moment in the courtroom, everything was in place. The meeting was scheduled for a Saturday morning at a family visitation center connected to the county jail. It was a room designed for inmates to meet with their children, painted in soft colors with toys in the corner and comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. Carolyn drove Ava there herself. Joan offered to come, but Carolyn wanted it to be just the two of them. Dr. Whitmore would meet them there. The drive was quiet. Ava sat in the passenger seat, clutching Zion's letter in one hand and the photograph in the other. She had dressed carefully that morning, choosing her favorite purple dress and the sneakers with the rainbow laces. "You look beautiful," Carolyn had told her. "I want her to see that I'm okay," Ava had replied. Now, as they pulled into the parking lot, Ava's breathing quickened. Carolyn reached over and squeezed her hand. "We can turn around right now if you want," Carolyn said. "No one will be upset." Ava shook her head. "No, I want to do this." They walked inside together. Dr. Whitmore was waiting in the lobby, her warm smile immediately putting them both at ease. She hugged Ava gently. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Dr. Whitmore asked. "Nervous," Ava admitted, "but also excited." "That's perfectly normal. Remember, you're in control here. If at any point you want to leave, we leave." "Okay." Ava nodded. A guard led them down a hallway to the visitation room. He opened the door and stepped aside. The room was empty except for one person. Zion Hayes stood near the window, her back to the door. She was wearing civilian clothes, jeans, and a simple blue sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. When she heard the door open, she turned. And when she saw Ava, her entire face transformed. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. She took one step forward, then stopped, as if afraid to come closer. Ava stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the woman who looked so much like her. The same dark eyes, the same high cheekbones, the same slight curve to her smile. "Hi," Zion whispered. Her voice cracked. "Hi, baby." Ava's grip on Carolyn's hand tightened. Then, slowly, she let go. She took one step forward, then another. "Hi," Ava said softly. Zion sank to her knees, bringing herself to Ava's level. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. "You're so beautiful. You're so grown up." Ava held up the photograph. "I brought this. Mom said it was yours." Zion's breath caught. "I thought I'd never see that again." "You can keep it, if you want." "Are you sure?" Ava nodded. "I have lots of pictures." "You don't have any." Zion took the photograph with trembling hands. She pressed it to her chest, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Ava watched her for a moment. Then she said, "I read your letter." Zion looked up, hope and fear warring in her eyes. "You did?" "Yeah. And I want you to know something." "What's that?" Ava's voice was steady, stronger than Carolyn expected. "I don't hate you. And I'm not mad at you. Mom told me you were sick, that you did the best you could. And I believe her." Zion covered her face with her hands. Her whole body shook. "I'm happy," Ava continued. "I have a good life. I have Mom and Aunt Joan and my friends in my school. I'm okay. So you don't have to worry anymore." Zion lowered her hands. Her face was wet with tears, but her expression was one of pure, overwhelming relief. "That's all I ever wanted. For you to be okay." Ava took another step closer. "Can I hug you?" Zion's eyes widened. "You want to?" Ava nodded. Zion opened her arms, and Ava walked into them. The moment they connected, Zion broke down completely. She held Ava like she was made of glass and gold, like she was afraid she might disappear. She buried her face in Ava's hair and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." Ava held on tight, her small arms wrapped around Zion's neck. Carolyn watched from the doorway, tears streaming down her own face. Dr. Whitmore stood beside her, one hand on Carolyn's shoulder. "You did a good thing," Dr. Whitmore whispered. "A brave thing." Carolyn could not speak. She could only watch as her daughter and the woman who gave birth to her held each other for the first time in 8 years. And in that moment, she knew everything was about to change. But maybe, just maybe, it was changing for the better. If you were Ava, would you want to meet the person who gave you life, even if they couldn't raise you? Let me know in the comments what you think. They stayed in that embrace for what felt like forever and no time at all. When they finally pulled apart, Zion kept her hands on Ava's shoulders, as if letting go completely might make her vanish. Can I ask you something? Zion said, her voice hoarse from crying. Okay, Ava said. Are you happy? Really happy? Ava nodded. Yeah, I am. Tell me about your life. Please. I want to know everything. They moved to the chairs in the center of the room. Ava sat across from Zion, and Carolyn took a seat slightly behind her daughter, close enough to provide support, but far enough to give them space. Dr. Whitmore sat off to the side, observing quietly. Ava started slowly, talking about school. Her favorite subject was English because she loved to read. She played soccer, though she admitted she was not very good at it. She had two best friends, Jasmine and Kennedy, and they had sleepovers almost every weekend. As Ava talked, Zion listened with an intensity that was almost physical. She leaned forward, hanging on every word, her eyes never leaving Ava's face. Every smile, every gesture, every detail seemed to matter to her. What do you want to be when you grow up? Zion asked. Ava thought for a moment. Maybe a teacher. Or a writer. I'm not sure yet. Mom says I don't have to decide right now. Your mom's right. Zion glanced at Carolyn, and something passed between them. Gratitude. Respect. An unspoken acknowledgement of the complicated truth they now shared. What about you? Ava asked. What did you want to be? Zion's smile was sad. I wanted to be a nurse. I liked the idea of helping people feel better. But I made some bad choices, and that dream kind of fell apart. Mom says you were sick, that you had an addiction. Zion's eyes widened slightly. She looked at Carolyn, who nodded encouragingly. That's right, Zion said carefully. I was addicted to drugs. It's a sickness that makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. Things that hurt yourself and the people you love. Are you better now? I am. I've been clean for over 4 years. It's still hard sometimes, but I work at it every day. Ava nodded thoughtfully. My friend Kennedy's uncle had an addiction. To alcohol. He's better now too. He comes to her house for holidays and everything. That's good, Zion said. It's really good that he got help. They fell into a comfortable rhythm after that. Ava asked questions, and Zion answered them honestly. She told Ava about growing up in Dorchester, about her own mother who had passed away when Zion was 17, about the mistakes she made and the long road back to herself. She never made excuses. She never tried to paint herself as a victim. She just told the truth. And Ava listened, absorbing it all with a maturity that stunned Carolyn. At one point, Ava asked, Did you ever think about me? When you were sick? Zion's eyes filled with tears again. Every single day? You were the reason I kept trying to get better. Even when I failed, even when I relapsed, the thought of you kept me alive. What did you think about? I thought about what you might look like. If you'd have my eyes or your father's smile. I wondered if you liked the same things I did when I was little. I wondered if you were afraid of the dark like I was. I wondered if anyone was reading you bedtime stories. Mom reads to me, Ava said, even though I'm old enough to read by myself. We're reading a book about a girl who finds a magical door in her grandmother's attic. Zion smiled through her tears. That sounds beautiful. It is. Maybe when you get out, you could read with us sometime. The room went very quiet. Zion looked at Carolyn, uncertainty written all over her face. Carolyn took a breath. This was not something she had planned for. But looking at Ava's hopeful expression, at the tentative connection forming between her daughter and this woman, she knew she could not say no. We can talk about that, Carolyn said gently. When the time comes. Zion's face crumpled with emotion. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for this. For all of it. You didn't have to do any of this. Yes, I did, Carolyn said. Ava deserved to know you. And you deserve to see that she's okay. Dr. Whitmore leaned forward slightly. Zion, can I ask you something? Of course. What do you hope comes from this? From meeting Ava today? Zion was quiet for a moment, considering the question. I just want her to know she was wanted. That she was loved. That I didn't give her up because I didn't care. I gave her up because I cared too much to let her suffer because of me. She looked at Ava. And I want you to know that whatever happens to me, whatever I have to face because of my mistakes, it was worth it. Meeting you today, seeing that you're happy and healthy and loved, that's more than I ever thought I'd get. So thank you, Ava. Thank you for giving me this gift. Ava's eyes were wet. Can I come back? To visit you again? Zion glanced at Carolyn, then at Dr. Whitmore. I would love that. But only if your mom thinks it's okay. And only if you want to. I want to, Ava said firmly. She turned to Carolyn. Can I, Mom? Please. Carolyn felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. This was not simple. It would require coordination, emotional support, careful boundaries. It would mean bringing Ava into the reality of Zion's incarceration, exposing her to a world Carolyn had hoped she would never have to see. But it would also mean honoring the truth. Honoring the love that existed between these two people, complicated and messy as it was. We'll figure it out, Carolyn said. One step at a time. Ava smiled, and Zion smiled back, and for the first time since walking into that courtroom 2 weeks ago, Carolyn felt something like peace. The rest of the visit passed too quickly. They talked about small things. Favorite foods. Favorite colors. Funny stories. Zion told Ava about a stray cat that used to hang around her old apartment building, and Ava told Zion about the time she accidentally dyed her hair blue with bath tablets. When the guard knocked on the door to signal that time was up, all three of them felt the weight of it. Ava stood slowly. I have to go now. I know, Zion said. She stood too, her hands clenched at her sides as if she were physically restraining herself from reaching out. Ava stepped forward and hugged her again, quick and tight. I'll come back, she whispered. I promise. I'll be here, Zion said. Ava pulled away and walked to Carolyn's side. Carolyn put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. Thank you, Zion said to Carolyn. For everything. For raising her. For loving her. For letting me see her. I know this was hard for you. It was the right thing to do, Carolyn said simply. Zion nodded. Then she looked at Ava one last time. I'm so proud of you. I know I don't have the right to say that, but I am. You're an amazing person. You can say it, Ava said. I don't mind. They left the room together, Carolyn and Ava and Dr. Whitmore. As they walked down the hallway, Ava was quiet, processing everything that had just happened. When they reached the parking lot, Ava finally spoke. Mom. Yeah, baby. Thank you for letting me meet her. Carolyn stopped and knelt down so she was eye level with her daughter. You don't have to thank me. This is your story too. You have a right to know all the people who love you. Do you think she'll be okay? In there? I think she's stronger than she looks. And I think knowing that you're okay will help her get through whatever comes next. Ava nodded. Then she said, I love you, Mom. You know that, right? Meeting her doesn't change that. Carolyn pulled her into a tight hug. I know, sweetheart. I know. They drove home in comfortable silence. When they pulled into the driveway, Joan was waiting on the porch. She stood up as they approached, searching their faces for clues about how it went. Ava ran to her. Aunt Joan, I met her. I met my birth mom. Joan knelt down and hugged her. How do you feel? Good. Sad. Happy. All mixed up. That sounds about right, Joan said, smoothing Ava's hair. Life's complicated like that sometimes. Ava went inside to change out of her dress. Joan turned to Carolyn, her eyebrows raised in question. It was beautiful, Carolyn said quietly. And hard, but mostly beautiful. What happens now? I don't know, but I think we're going to figure it out together. Over the next few weeks, a new rhythm emerged. Carolyn hired a prominent criminal defense attorney named Patricia Langford to represent Zion. Patricia was known for her work with women in the justice system, particularly those with histories of addiction and trauma. She was expensive, but Carolyn paid the retainer without hesitation. Patricia reviewed Zion's case and came back with a strategy. She would argue for alternative sentencing, restitution to the victims, intensive probation, mandatory counseling, and community service. It was not a guarantee, but it was a chance. The new judge assigned to the case was Stanley Brennan, a fair-minded man in his early 60s who had a reputation for considering the whole person, not just the crime. Gerald worked with Patricia to build a comprehensive picture of Zion's life. Her years of sobriety, her steady employment at a community center before her arrest, letters of support from her sponsor, her therapist, her former caseworker who had helped her get clean, and, most powerfully, a letter from Carolyn herself. She spent hours writing it, trying to capture the complexity of what she felt. She wrote about Ava, about the beautiful, compassionate child Zion had brought into the world. She wrote about the meeting at the jail, about the grace and honesty Zion had shown. She wrote about second chances and the power of redemption. She did not ask for leniency. She asked for justice. Real justice, the kind that considered not just punishment, but healing. When she finished, she read it to Joan, who cried. Thomas would be proud of you, Joan said. This is who he fell in love with. This woman right here, who fights for what's right even when it's hard. Carolyn folded the letter carefully and gave it to Patricia. Meanwhile, Ava began seeing Dr. Whitmore twice a week. They talked about identity, about what it meant to have two mothers, about the complicated feelings of loyalty and love. Dr. Whitmore helped her understand that loving Zion did not mean loving Carolyn less, that hearts could expand to hold more than one truth. And every other Saturday, Carolyn drove Ava to the visitation center. Each visit, Ava and Zion grew more comfortable with each other. They played card games. They drew pictures together. Zion taught Ava how to braid hair, and Ava taught Zion a clapping game she had learned at school. Sometimes they talked about serious things. Other times they just enjoyed being together. And Carolyn watched it all, her heart full and breaking at the same time. One evening, about a month after the first meeting, Ava came to Carolyn's room. Carolyn was sitting up in bed, reading case files for work. Mom, can I ask you something? Carolyn set the files aside. Of course. Ava climbed onto the bed and sat cross-legged facing her. Do you ever feel jealous? When I talk about Zion? Carolyn considered the question carefully. Sometimes, she admitted. Not because I don't want you to love her, but because I'm human, and sometimes I worry that I'm not enough. That knowing her will make you wish things had been different. I don't wish that, Ava said firmly. I mean, I wish she hadn't gotten sick. I wish she hadn't had to give me up. But I don't wish I didn't have you. You're my mom. You're the one who was there when I had nightmares. You're the one who taught me to ride a bike. You're the one who makes me soup when I'm sick. That doesn't change. Carolyn's eyes filled with tears. You are wise beyond your years, you know that. Ava smiled. I learned from the best. They sat together in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Ava said, I want to go to her sentencing hearing. When it happens, I want to be there. Carolyn's stomach tightened. That might be hard, baby. Sentencing hearings can be emotional. There might be people saying things about her that are difficult to hear. I know, but I want her to see that I'm there, that I support her. Even if she has to go to prison, I want her to know she's not alone. Carolyn pulled her daughter close. Okay, if that's what you want, we'll be there. Thank you, Mom. You don't have to thank me. We're a team, remember? Ava looked up at the drawing still on the refrigerator downstairs in her mind. Best team ever. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for early November, almost 3 months after that first impossible moment in the courtroom. The night before, Carolyn could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The broken window, the photograph, the whispered word, Daddy, that had turned her world upside down. She thought about Zion, sitting in a cell, waiting to learn her fate. She thought about Ava, sleeping peacefully down the hall, carrying a weight no 11-year-old should have to carry. And she thought about justice, what it meant, what it should mean. The next morning, they dressed carefully. Ava wore a navy blue dress and her nicest shoes. Carolyn wore a gray suit, professional but not imposing. Joan drove them to the courthouse. The building looked different to Carolyn now, walking in as a mother instead of a judge. She felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she never had before. The courtroom was moderately full. The victims were there, the couple whose home Zion had broken into. The prosecutor, Linda Ortiz, sat at her table looking grim and determined. Patricia Langford sat at the defense table, her posture confident despite the odds. And then there was Zion. She was brought in wearing the same orange jumpsuit from before. But something about her was different. She held her head higher. Her eyes were clear. When she saw Ava in the gallery, her face transformed with love and gratitude. Ava waved, a small, tentative gesture. Zion waved back, tears already streaming down her face. Judge Brennan entered, and everyone stood. He was a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes. He surveyed the room with a practiced gaze, then sat. Please be seated, he said. We're here today for the sentencing of Zion Hayes. I've reviewed all the materials submitted by both the prosecution and the defense, and I've given this case considerable thought. He looked at Zion. Ms. Hayes, please stand. Zion stood, Patricia beside her. Ms. Hayes, you have been convicted of breaking and entering, theft, and violation of parole. These are serious crimes that caused real harm to the victims. The couple whose home you violated have submitted impact statements detailing the fear and trauma you caused them. I want you to understand that your actions had consequences beyond yourself." Zion nodded, her jaw tight. "I understand, Your Honor, and I'm deeply sorry. However," Judge Brennan continued, "I've also reviewed extensive documentation about your journey toward recovery. Your 4 years of sobriety, your employment history, the support system you've built, and perhaps most compelling, the circumstances that led to your crime." He picked up a piece of paper. Carolyn recognized her own handwriting. "I received a letter from Judge Carolyn Mercer," he said. "In it, she describes a meeting between you and your biological daughter, who she adopted 9 years ago. She describes your genuine remorse, your love for your child, and your commitment to not letting your past define your future." The courtroom was silent. Every eye was on Judge Brennan. "I also received letters from the victims," he continued. "And after reading Judge Mercer's account, they submitted an additional statement. They wrote, and I quote, 'While we were terrified by Ms. Hayes' actions, we have learned about the circumstances that led to them. We understand that she was not a threat to our safety, but a mother searching for her child. We support alternative sentencing that holds her accountable while allowing her to continue her rehabilitation.'" Carolyn's heart leaped. She had not known the victims had submitted that statement. Judge Brennan set the papers down. "Ms. Hayes, I believe in second chances. I believe that our justice system should heal, not just punish. Therefore, I'm sentencing you to 5 years probation, with the first year to be served in a residential treatment facility that specializes in addiction recovery and family reunification. You will complete 500 hours of community service. You will pay full restitution to the victims, and you will continue therapy and maintain your sobriety." Zion's knees buckled. Patricia caught her. Sobs of relief shook her body. "Furthermore," Judge Brennan said, "I'm ordering that you be allowed supervised visitation with your daughter with the consent of her legal guardian, as part of your treatment plan. Because I believe that connection, that love, is part of what will keep you on the right path." Ava grabbed Carolyn's hand, squeezing tight. Tears streamed down both their faces. "Do you understand the terms of your sentence, Ms. Hayes?" Judge Brennan asked. Zion could barely speak. "Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me. Thank the people who stood by you. And don't waste this chance. I don't give many of them. I won't. I promise." Judge Brennan brought down his gavel. "This court is adjourned." The courtroom erupted in quiet conversation. Patricia hugged Zion. Gerald pumped his fist in victory. And Ava turned to Carolyn, her face radiant. "She's not going to prison, Mom. She's going to get better." "I know, baby. I know." They waited until Zion was let out, and just before she disappeared through the door, she turned back one last time. She looked at Ava, then at Carolyn, and mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Carolyn nodded. And in that moment, she knew that everything they had been through, all the fear and uncertainty and painful conversations, had been worth it. Because this was justice. Real, complicated, beautiful justice. 6 months later, spring arrived in Massachusetts with a softness that felt like forgiveness. Carolyn stood in her kitchen making breakfast, the morning sun pouring through the window and painting everything gold. Ava sat at the table doing homework, her pencil moving steadily across the page. Joan was in the living room reading the newspaper, her coffee growing cold in her hand. It was an ordinary Saturday morning, the kind Carolyn had once taken for granted. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. Not since everything had changed. The doorbell rang, and Ava's head shot up. Her face broke into a smile. "She's here." She jumped up from the table and ran to the door. Carolyn followed at a slower pace, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her heart beating just a little faster than usual. When Ava opened the door, Zion Hayes stood on the porch holding a small backpack and a bouquet of wildflowers. She looked different than she had in the courtroom. Her hair was longer, pulled back in a neat ponytail. She wore jeans and a soft yellow sweater. Her face had filled out slightly, the gauntness replaced by health. But it was her eyes that had changed the most. They were brighter now. Hopeful. "Hi," Zion said, her voice soft. "Hi." Ava threw her arms around Zion's waist. Zion dropped the backpack and hugged her back, closing her eyes and breathing in the moment. When they pulled apart, Zion held out the flowers. "These are for you, Carolyn, for having me in your home." Carolyn took them, touched by the gesture. "Thank you. They're beautiful. Come in, please." Zion stepped inside, looking around with quiet wonder. This was the first time she had been allowed to visit Carolyn's home. The residential treatment facility where she had spent the past 6 months had strict rules about outside contact, but she had completed the program 3 weeks ago and was now living in a transitional housing facility while she looked for permanent work and housing. This visit had been planned for weeks. Dr. Whitmore had helped them prepare for it, talking through expectations and boundaries. Ava had cleaned her room twice. Carolyn had baked cookies. Joan came out from the living room and extended her hand. "You must be Zion." "I'm Joan, Carolyn's sister-in-law." Zion shook her hand. "It's nice to meet you. Thank you for welcoming me." "Of course." Ava's been talking about this visit non-stop for days. Ava grabbed Zion's hand. "Come on, I want to show you my room." They disappeared upstairs, Ava's excited chatter echoing through the house. Carolyn stood in the hallway holding the wildflowers, feeling the strangeness of the moment settle over her. Joan touched her shoulder. "You okay?" "I think so. It's just surreal. Having her here. In my home. In the life I built for Ava. She's not here to take anything from you," Joan said gently. "She's here because you're generous enough to share." Carolyn nodded. She knew Joan was right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two different things. She went to the kitchen and put the flowers in a vase, then carried it to the dining room table. Through the ceiling, she could hear Ava's voice, animated and happy, and Zion's quieter responses. After about 20 minutes, they came back downstairs. Ava was holding a small photo album. "Mom, Zion wants to see pictures of when I was little. Is that okay?" "Of course," Carolyn said. She joined them in the living room, where they settled onto the couch. Ava sat between them, the album open on her lap. She turned the pages slowly, narrating each photo. "This is from my first day of kindergarten. I was so scared I cried. And this is from Halloween when I was 6. I dressed up as a butterfly." Zion studied each image with an intensity that made Carolyn's chest ache. She was memorizing them, trying to fill in all the years she had missed. When they reached a photo of Ava's 7th birthday party, Zion's hand trembled slightly. "You look so happy," she whispered. "I was," Ava said. "Mom threw me a princess party. We had a bounce house and everything." "That sounds amazing." They continued through the album. Photos of school plays and soccer games and family vacations. A life documented in careful detail. A life Zion had not been part of. When they reached the last page, Zion closed the album gently. "Thank you for showing me. It means more than you know." "Do you have any pictures?" Ava asked. "From when you were little?" Zion's smile was sad. "Not many. My mom didn't take a lot of photos. But I have a few on my phone. Want to see?" Ava nodded eagerly. Zion pulled out her phone and scrolled through her camera roll. She found a faded image that had been photographed from an old print. It showed a young girl, maybe 8 years old, standing in front of a chain-link fence. She was wearing a too big t-shirt and had her hair in 2 braids. She was smiling, but there was something cautious in her eyes. "That's you?" Ava asked. "That's me. About your age, actually." Ava studied the photo. "You look like me. We have the same smile." "We do," Zion said softly. "You got a lot from me. The good and the bad." "What's the bad?" Ava asked. Zion thought for a moment. "Stubbornness. I was incredibly stubborn. Still am, sometimes. Once I get an idea in my head, it's hard to shake it." Ava laughed. "Mom says I'm stubborn too. I wonder where you get it," Carolyn said dryly, and all 3 of them laughed. The morning passed more easily than Carolyn had expected. They had lunch together, sandwiches and fruit that Ava had helped prepare. Zion told stories about her work at the community center, where she had been volunteering as part of her community service requirement. She ran a support group for women in recovery, helping others navigate the same path she had walked. "It's the hardest thing I've ever done," Zion said. "Listening to their stories, seeing myself in them. But it's also the most meaningful. If I can help even one person avoid the mistakes I made, then maybe all of this meant something." "It already means something," Carolyn said. "You're building something real. Something lasting." Zion looked at her, gratitude shining in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you. What you did for me, giving me that chance with Ava, it saved my life. Literally. I don't know if I would have survived prison. But knowing she was out here, knowing she was okay, it gave me a reason to keep fighting." "You saved yourself," Carolyn said firmly. "I just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it." After lunch, Ava asked if they could go to the park. It was a beautiful day, warm and breezy, perfect for being outside. Carolyn agreed, and they walked the 3 blocks together, Ava in the middle holding both their hands. At the park, Ava ran to the swings. "Push me," she called. Zion and Carolyn looked at each other. Then, without speaking, they moved to stand on either side of the swing. They took turns pushing, sending Ava higher and higher until she was shrieking with laughter. "Higher, higher. That's high enough," Carolyn said, her protective instincts kicking in. But Zion gave one more push, and Ava soared, her hair flying behind her, her face tilted toward the sun. "I'm flying," she shouted. Carolyn watched her daughter, suspended in that perfect moment between earth and sky, held aloft by momentum and trust. And she thought about how far they had all come, how much they had all risked. When Ava finally tired of the swings, they walked to a bench and sat down. Ava pulled out the sidewalk chalk she had brought and began drawing on the pavement. Zion and Carolyn sat in comfortable silence, watching her. "Can I ask you something?" Zion said quietly. "Of course. Do you ever regret it? Letting me into her life?" Carolyn considered the question carefully. "There are moments when it's hard. When I see how much she loves you, and I feel that little pang of jealousy. But regret? No, never. Because the truth is, loving you doesn't take anything away from me. If anything, it makes her more whole." She's not carrying that question anymore. That wondering. She knows where she comes from. And that's a gift. Zion's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to. Just keep showing up. Keep being honest with her. Keep fighting to be the best version of yourself. That's all the thanks I need." They sat quietly for a moment. Then Zion said, "I've been accepted into a nursing program. It's part-time, at the community college. I start in the fall." Carolyn turned to her in surprise. "Zion, that's wonderful. It's what I always wanted to do, before everything fell apart. And I figured, it's not too late to try again. To become the person I was meant to be." "It's never too late," Carolyn said. "I'm so proud of you." The words hung in the air between them, unexpected and true. Zion looked at Carolyn with wonder, as if she could not quite believe what she had heard. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means everything." Ava looked up from her chalk drawing. "Come see. I made something for both of you." They walked over. On the pavement, Ava had drawn 3 stick figures holding hands. One had yellow hair, one had brown hair pulled back, and one was small with 2 puffs. Above them, she had written in careful letters, "My family." Zion covered her mouth with her hand. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Carolyn felt her own eyes burning. She looked at Ava, this brave, beautiful child who somehow had enough love in her heart for all of them. "It's perfect," Carolyn said, her voice thick. "Can I take a picture?" Zion asked. "I want to remember this." "Of course." Zion pulled out her phone and took several photos of the drawing. Then Ava insisted they take a picture together, all 3 of them standing beside the chalk family. A woman passing by offered to take it for them. They stood close, Ava in the middle, Carolyn's hand on one shoulder and Zion's on the other. "Say cheese," the woman called. "Cheese," they chorused. The woman took the picture and handed the phone back to Zion. She glanced at the image on the screen and smiled. "Beautiful family," she said before walking away. Zion looked at the photo for a long time. "Can I send this to you?" she asked Carolyn. "Please do." They stayed at the park until the sun began to sink lower in the sky. On the walk home, Ava chattered about everything and nothing, her hands swinging between theirs. When they reached the house, Zion stopped on the porch. "I should probably get going. I don't want to overstay my welcome." "You could stay for dinner," Carolyn offered. "If you want. Nothing fancy. Just spaghetti." Zion's face lit up. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." They went inside, and Carolyn started cooking while Zion and Ava set the table. Joan joined them, and the kitchen filled with conversation and laughter. It felt natural, easy, like they had been doing this forever instead of for just one day. Over dinner, they talked about everything. Zion's plans for nursing school, Ava's upcoming science fair project, Joan's terrible attempts at learning to use social media. The conversation flowed, and the spaces between words were comfortable rather than awkward. After dinner, Ava asked if Zion could read with them. Carolyn brought out the book they were currently working through, a fantasy novel about a girl who discovered she had magic. They settled on the couch, Ava between them again, and took turns reading chapters aloud. Zion's voice was soft and expressive, bringing the characters to life. When it was Carolyn's turn, she found herself glancing over at Zion, seeing the wonder and contentment on her face. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not without complication, but real and beautiful and worth every difficult moment. When they finished 2 chapters, Ava yawned. I'm getting sleepy. It's been a big day, Carolyn said. Why don't you go get ready for bed? Ava hugged Zion tightly. Will you come back? Soon. I'd love to. If that's okay with your mom. It's okay with me, Carolyn said. Ava went upstairs, and Zion stood to leave. Carolyn walked her to the door. Thank you, Zion said. For today. For all of this. I know it's not easy for you. It's getting easier, Carolyn admitted. And seeing how happy Ava is, that makes everything worth it. Zion hesitated, then said, I want you to know something. I'm not trying to be her mother. Not in the way you are. You're the one who raised her. You're the one who was there for everything. I just want to be someone who loves her. Someone she knows she can count on. That's all she needs from you, Carolyn said. And honestly, that's all any of us can really do. Just keep showing up with love. Zion nodded. Then, impulsively, she hugged Carolyn. It was brief, almost hesitant, but genuine. When she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. You gave me back my life. Both of you. I'll never forget that. We'll see you next week? Carolyn asked. I'll be here. Carolyn watched as Zion walked down the path and climbed into the rideshare car that had been waiting. She waved as the car pulled away, then closed the door and leaned against it. Joan appeared from the kitchen. That went well. It did, Carolyn agreed. Better than I expected. You did a good thing, Carolyn. A brave thing. We all did. Carolyn climbed the stairs to Ava's room. Her daughter was already in bed, her favorite stuffed animal tucked under her arm. Carolyn sat on the edge of the bed and smoothed Ava's hair back from her forehead. Did you have a good day? Carolyn asked. The best day, Ava said. Her eyes were already half closed. Mom. Yeah, baby. I'm really lucky, aren't I? To have 2 moms who love me. Carolyn's throat tightened. We're the lucky ones, sweetheart. Both of us. I love you, Mom. I love you too. So much. She kissed Ava's forehead and turned off the light. But she stayed for a moment in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep, marveling at the resilience of the human heart. So much had changed since that day in the courtroom. So much had been torn apart and rebuilt in new, unexpected ways. But through it all, one thing remained constant. Love. Imperfect, complicated, fierce, forgiving love. And in the end, that was the only justice that truly mattered. 3 years passed. Ava was 14 now, taller and more confident, navigating the turbulent waters of middle school with grace and occasional drama. She played varsity soccer. She had her first boyfriend, then her first heartbreak. She discovered a love for photography and spent hours capturing the world through her lens. And through it all, 2 mothers stood beside her. Carolyn, who attended every game and helped with every homework assignment, and held her when she cried over friendship betrayals and impossible algebra problems. And Zion, who visited every Sunday, who sent encouraging texts before big tests, who listened without judgment when Ava needed to vent, who had become exactly what she promised to be, someone who showed up with love. Zion had graduated from nursing school and gotten a job at the same hospital where Carolyn's late husband had worked. Sometimes Carolyn would see her in the hallways, professional and competent in her scrubs, and feel a swell of pride that surprised her with its intensity. They were not friends, exactly. The relationship was too complicated for such a simple label. But they were something. Co-parents, maybe. Allies in the shared project of raising an extraordinary young woman. And on this particular Sunday in October, they all gathered at Carolyn's house for what had become their tradition, Sunday dinner. Zion arrived with her girlfriend, a woman named Brenna who worked as a social worker. They had been together for 6 months, and Ava adored her. Joan was there too, as always. And Carolyn's parents, who had flown in from Florida for the weekend. The house was full of noise and laughter and the smell of roasting chicken. Ava flitted between the adults, telling stories, stealing bites of food from the kitchen, her energy filling every corner. As Carolyn stood at the stove stirring gravy, Zion appeared beside her with a glass of wine. For you, Zion said. You look like you could use it. Carolyn took it gratefully. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who knows you. They stood side by side in comfortable silence. Through the window, they could see Ava in the backyard showing Brenna her photography portfolio on her phone. She's applying to that arts high school, Carolyn said. The competitive one downtown. I know. She told me. She's nervous about the interview. I told her she has nothing to worry about. She's incredibly talented. She gets that from you, Zion said. The dedication. The work ethic. She gets it from both of us, Carolyn corrected gently. You gave her that fighter's spirit. That refusal to give up even when things are hard. Zion looked at her, surprised. You think so? I know so. They fell quiet again. Then Zion said, Can I tell you something? Always. When I was sitting in that jail cell, waiting to be sentenced, I prayed. I hadn't prayed in years, maybe ever. But I prayed that if I got another chance, I wouldn't waste it. That I'd become someone worthy of the gift you gave me. Carolyn turned to face her fully. Zion, you were always worthy. You just needed someone to see it. You saw it, Zion said. When no one else did. When I couldn't even see it myself. You looked at me, a convicted criminal, a drug addict, someone who had broken into a house, and you saw a mother. You saw someone worth saving. I saw the truth, Carolyn said simply. And the truth was that you loved your daughter. Everything else was just noise. Zion's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Thank you. For everything. For then, and for now, and for every Sunday in between. You're welcome. But you know, you've thanked me enough. You don't have to keep doing it. I do, though. Because I never want to take this for granted. Any of this. Joan called from the dining room. Food's getting cold. They carried dishes to the table, and everyone gathered around. It was crowded and chaotic and perfect. Carolyn looked around at the faces she loved. Joan's familiar warmth, her parents' proud smiles, Brenna's easy laughter, Zion's quiet contentment, and Ava, bright and beautiful at the center of it all. Should we say grace? Carolyn's mother asked. Everyone joined hands around the table. Carolyn found herself between Ava and Zion, their hands warm in hers. Actually, Ava said, Can I say something? Of course, honey, Carolyn said. Ava looked around the table, suddenly shy. I just want to say thank you. To everyone. For being my family. All of you. I know our family looks different than other people's. I know it's complicated. But I wouldn't change it. I love that I have so many people who care about me. Who show up for me. Who love me even when I'm being annoying. Everyone laughed. So thank you. Ava continued, her voice getting thick with emotion. For choosing me. And for choosing each other. For being brave enough to make this work. Carolyn squeezed her daughter's hand, unable to speak. Across the table, Zion was openly crying. Well, Joan said, clearing her throat. I think that's the best grace I've ever heard. They ate and talked and laughed until the sun set, and the candles on the table were the only light. And when dinner was over and the dishes were done and the guests began to leave, Carolyn stood on the porch with Ava and watched Zion and Brenna walk to their car. Zion turned back one more time and waved. Carolyn and Ava waved back. Mom, Ava said. Yeah. Do you believe in miracles? Carolyn thought about the photograph. The courtroom. The impossible moment when two lives collided and everything changed. She thought about the choice she had made, the risk she had taken, the door she had opened. I do, she said. I believe in small miracles. The everyday kind. The kind that happen when people choose love over fear. Ava leaned against her. I think you're my miracle. No, baby. You're mine. You and Zion both. You taught me that love doesn't divide. It multiplies. That there's always room for one more person at the table. They stood together in the gathering darkness, two figures silhouetted against the warm light spilling from the house behind them. And somewhere in the city, Zion Hayes drove home to her small apartment, her heart full, her life transformed by the impossible grace of a judge who had seen past the crime to the mother underneath. She thought about the wish she had made in that courtroom 3 years ago, the desperate plea to see her daughter just once. That wish had been granted, but what she received was so much more than she had asked for. She had received a second chance, a family, a future. She had received forgiveness, and in return, she had given the only thing she had left to give. Love. Fierce, imperfect, never-ending love. And in the end, that was everything. I want to hear from you. What moment in this story touched your heart the most? Was it when Carolyn first met Zion? When Ava chose to meet her birth mother? Or when they all came together as a family? Drop a comment below and let me know. Your stories matter to me, and I read every single one. And if this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Tomorrow, I have something special lined up that you won't want to miss. Until then, remember, Love doesn't divide, it multiplies. There's always room for one more person at the table. God bless you all. See you in the next one.
Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this one, then you'll absolutely love the next. It's even crazier and more captivating than you can imagine. So go ahead and click the video showing right here on your screen, and I'll see you in the next story.